Hi, welcome back to the second season of Get to the Joke. I'm Marc Stoudemire, and our guest today is Brandon Jackson, a comic from Delaware who has a very popular and very amazing podcast called English for Criminals that you have to check out. He's also going to be recording his debut stand-up album at Helium Comedy Club in January. And Brandon gives one of my favorite interviews on here. He has such an incredible outlook on his life and how he constructs jokes and how he sees his comedy career, both good and bad. I really enjoyed this time with Brandon. He is an incredible comic, an incredible guest, and now subscribe to this channel. And with no further ado, let's get to the joke.
I overdrafted my bank account, which surprised me because I had overdraft protection. But apparently, that's not what that is. It's not protection. A protection racket, maybe. You know what overdraft protection is? It basically, your bank lets you spend a little bit more money than you actually have, and then they drag you to hell. And they don't apologize for it. It's like weird. It's really deceptive because they handed me this pamphlet and it had like a picture of a boy on it. He's on a bicycle with helmet and knee pads, safety. But the picture, it should be a man digging his own grave. That would be... That bank was in the supermarket I worked at. They saw me stacking potatoes. They knew I didn't have a second bank account. Why would they sign me up for this shit? If you went to the Grand Canyon and there were no guardrails, you'd be like, where are the guardrails? They'd be like, oh, every time you fall off, we charge you $50. Are you gonna come get me? No. We're gonna charge you $8 a day until you drag your crippled carcass back to the top of the mountain. Now, you can't throw me on the back of a mule or something.
Hey, buddy. Hey, sorry. I had a camera behind you just in case this doesn't pick up. How are you? How you doing, Brand? It's good to see you, man. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Yeah, it hasn't been I've seen people. I've been going out a little bit more lately in Philly, so I've been seeing people from the comedy scene, and it's like I haven't seen this person in a year, but it feels like we're just picking up where we left off.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's so good to see you, man. I'm really happy that you said yes to doing this because you are one of my favorite comics. I always when you drop in and do like an open mic or you're on a show, like I know that that whatever you're going to say is going to be original, it's going to be hilarious, and part of what this is supposed to be is to kind of break down some of the people who I consider like the best of the best comics and break down kind of some of your habits and tease out some of your writing skills, how you develop jokes, how you edit jokes, and that kind of thing. So I'm really very appreciative that you sat down here and did this with me. I'm very interested to learn about you. Like I said, I always look forward to hearing your jokes, and so I think you're probably one of the comics when people talk about hey, this comic's funny, but he's not really saying anything. You're one of those comics that are saying something. Like people walk away knowing who you are after you tell your jokes. Like you're very, very good at putting yourself completely out there in a very clever and original way, and then also be hilarious on top of it. So I kind of want to dive all the way back
Okay.
and get an understanding, like in a chicken and the egg situation, if you can remember. What came first? The realization that you were very funny and could make people laugh, especially people who were different than you, or that stand-up comedy was a career? Do you remember which one came first?
I don't know if I've ever come to those realizations. I think stand-up comedy was something I started doing out of desperation.
Why do you say that?
I was working, I think maybe you've heard some of my jokes about working at the youth prison.
Yeah.
And so when I was working there, that's a tough crowd,
Yeah.
And I felt very out of place there. And, I had gone through a couple years of, when I left college, of just feeling like really out of place, feeling like I was being judged based on things that I wasn't trying to do.
Okay.
Like, I feel like I was always afraid of trying to be funny because I always thought people would assume I was being serious and would take me the wrong way.
I get that.
So I would just keep my mouth shut most of the time.
Okay.
But, as I had gotten older, I just got kind of tired of people misconstruing who I was. And I felt like comedy was the best way to just kind of like lay it out there. This is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it on my terms. I'm going to make you listen. I'm going to make you understand. And I'm going to make you enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously very educated. I mean, you have a master's in English, don't you? A master's
teaching English as a second language.
Okay. And so like, how do you get it? I mean, so obviously you're a very marketable person. So how do you even get into a youth prison and get employed there? Was that like a way of you like giving back? Was there like an honorable way of going? Cause I'm sure you got a teaching job somewhere else.
I was not very marketable at the time. When I was in college, I barely graduated because I was just kind of fucking around. And I thought I was majoring in Latin American politics.
Okay.
But then I found out later that wasn't a major. I had imagined it. And so they were like, you need to pick a major. And so I ended up majoring in English with a concentration in film studies.
Okay.
Which was something I was always interested in film. I wanted to be a filmmaker at some point.
Okay.
But I had that major and it was useless. There was nothing I could do with it. It's not higher, but at some point I stopped putting that on my resume. I just put English. I didn't even mention the film studies part anymore. But I was working for a video production company, and I thought that was the direction I was going to go in. I was going to eventually work in film, but like I just never was comfortable in that space, that specific skill set. So I was actually working for a nonprofit video production company.
Okay.
And I was doing that through Public Allies, which is an AmeriCorps program.
Okay.
And so I was in AmeriCorps, and then after that year ended, I decided I didn't want to do. I felt kind of cooped up in this video production company, and I had gotten a little taste through Public Allies and AmeriCorps of like being out in the community and actually interacting with people and kids in the community, and I wanted to do more of that. So I ended up signing up for this job, working for juvenile probation as a mentor and a youth advocate.
Okay.
And I did that for a year.
Okay.
And then after that was over, I kind of merged both my like film video production experience and my experience working with juvenile delinquents, and I got this job teaching video production at the youth prison.
Okay. Well, who knew that the youth person had video production? I would have never guessed that in a million years that there was.
I think it's just that one youth person.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool, man. But I mean, so going back though, like, were you exposed to stand up? Is it like a kid? I don't know if your parents were real into it. You know, it sounds like you said that it came out of almost like you said a desperation or a way for you to kind of express yourself in a way that would be on your terms. But so it almost sounds like this was a later in life situation, and that like a young Brandon Jackson wasn't too much aware of stand-up comedy.
I watched a lot of stand-up.
Okay.
When I was, especially after I became a teenager. So I think starting 12, 13 years old, I was watching a lot of stand-up. D.L. Hughley, Steve Harvey. I remember a lot of Chris Rock. I watched a lot of Chris Rock.
Yeah.
Kings of Comedy had come out around that time. And I would watch that. And I watched those a lot.
Okay.
I would watch them over and over again.
Oh, wow.
I would listen to the albums over and over again. I watched a lot of sketch comedy. I would record SNL episodes and rewatch them.
Okay.
And I ingested a lot of comedy, but it wasn't from a perspective of this is something I'm going to do one day. I just loved it.
Okay.
And I would memorize bits, and I would go to the cafeteria at lunch, and I would tell these bits to my friends. Just anybody I could find. Oh, I heard this bit, and I would just repeat word for word some Chris Rock bit that I heard to my friends.
Nice.
I did that for years. I did it in college, and it never occurred to me at all at that time that I was practicing stand-up comedy, because I'd never gone to stand-up comedy. I never considered myself a funny person. Yeah. I just loved stand-up.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, it sounds like you kind of accidentally became a student of comedy, because almost in the same way that Van Gogh would copy other artists, he would just trace other artists' pictures, till he got good. You pretty much did the same thing with comics that you liked and respected. Now, were your parents kind of were you kind of the funny kid then? Were you the funny kid in the family?
No,
okay. So this blew your parents out of the water then when you decided to make this an actual.
Definitely surprising to them that I started doing stand. My mother doesn't think I'm funny at all. She just thinks I'm irritating. She thinks that I say things that don't make any sense, and is exhausted with me at all times.
Is she supportive, or is she not on board with this?
Yeah, she likes that I do this. I think I wouldn't have made it to 34 if it wasn't for stand-up comedy. So I think she's glad that I'm still here.
But now, I mean, so she, obviously you went to, college and then secondary education. Was there any pushback from your parents or from anyone else in your life that was you did all this time, you racked up all this debt, and you want to pursue something that doesn't even require a GED to accomplish? Was there any pushback from that angle? Because you're a very intelligent guy and you want to pursue something? Okay.
Not really.
Well, that's good.
Everybody kind of was happy that I found something to do with my time. Because other than that, I probably would have just been, I don't know what I would have done.
Well,
really do anything else.
Well, no, I mean, so when you were little and you were doing these bits in the cafeteria to your friends, I mean, was this a class clown? Were you a class clown? Were you a funny kid? People that see you now do comedy that were your friends in high school, or at least knew you in high school or middle school or whatever. Are they not surprised by this because they knew, oh, hey, this is kind of weird. Only it took him this long to do it because he was doing this when he was 15.
I think my really close friends knew that I was really funny.
Okay.
I don't think anybody outside of that circle knew, and I didn't even know because I have a very dry kind of weight.
Yeah.
I don't have an aggressive sense of humor. I kind of sit in it and I wait for the moment to attack.
That is probably what I respect most about your comedy is you are so laid back on stage. You are so confident that whatever you say is better. That's going to be better than anything else anyone's going to say that night. I mean, it's intimidating. When I've been on shows with you, or I see you will just stand on stage, and it could be a rowdy bar like the one that I forget the name of that bar, Rugola's, or it was in Delaware that we did together. I mean, it's crazy how confident you are and how laid back. It doesn't matter. There could be a pipe bomb that goes off next door, and you're going to still do your bits, and it's still going to be the same kind of style. So are you this laid back and stuff in real life? do you get angry, or is this how Brandon Jackson is? Always is laid back?
I used to have a really bad temper when I was
Really?
a kid and when I was in high school. And even in college, I would like freak out on people all the time. I definitely calmed down a lot over the last 10 years. But that's mostly just I'm just not in the situations I used to be in before.
What were those situations?
Well, I just had more choice.
Okay.
Over what I'm doing in my life. When I was younger, I didn't have a car. I was going where my friends were dragging. I was stuck in wherever I was in college. I was in my frat house, or I was in the dorm, or I was wherever it was. I was always stuck there.
Okay.
I would just I'm a very irritable person. I think people don't realize how, some people know, but I'm very irritable. But the thing is, as an adult, I can always just leave.
Yeah. Okay. Very true.
Which is the difference. When I was younger, I was a kid, I was just stuck places with people. And so I would just freak out because I just wanted to leave.
So if you're stuck with these people, obviously if you're stuck with your friends, you're not as irritable and freaking out. So it sounds like your environment wasn't the great. You're stuck with people that you would rather not even have in your life. Is that?
Well, even if it was with my friends,
Okay.
At some point I just want to leave. I run out of.
Okay.
The ability to be around people.
I mean, so do you like being alone? Is that something that you thrive on? Is this, I talked about this with Pat House, like the best part of his evening is getting back to that hotel to be by himself. Like that, he looks forward to that after he's done performing. Are you very much the same way where it's that being, you're very more introverted. You liked being alone and being around a group of people, and maybe that's why you're so quiet and confident, because you're almost not in the environment. When you're in a comedy club, that's not the environment you would choose to be in, and maybe that's why your personality is like that.
I think it's mostly I just get bored very easily.
Okay.
And I lose the ability to focus on. If something's not keeping my interest, I can't focus on it, and then I get irritated.
Okay.
And then I gotta leave.
Okay. Now, you said that you did comedy out of desperation because it was the only avenue you could take where you could express who you are. What was going on that you were being misrepresented? Was this something like at your job or?
I was working at the youth prison.
Yeah.
And it was like a constant, under attack.
I can imagine.
At all times for who you were, and I didn't get along with, the students were that. It was like the people that worked there I didn't vibe with, and they would make a lot of assumptions about who I was, and I didn't think it was appropriate for me to really put my foot down and say, this is who I am, and this is it.
Well, what were some of those assumptions that they were making about you?
I think people assumed that I was straight.
Okay.
And so that people would talk to me about stuff like I was straight.
Yeah.
And it was like, but then, if you tell them the truth, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I didn't want to hear about that. I'm like, well, I didn't want to hear about stuff that you were telling me.
Exactly.
So it was kind of like, it was a lot of inappropriate workplace conversation, and I felt like if I had came out and been honest with people, people would have said that I was being inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this isn't the appropriate place to talk about these things.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And now,
feel comfortable doing it.
And you're at a prison. I mean, it's a youth prison, but that doesn't mean that the crimes are any lighter than an adult prison. They're just separated by age. What was it? The fact that you were gay, were you afraid if you were to be your real self? Were you afraid that if the other prisoners found out, or if the other guards or whatever, other teachers or faculty or staff,
They did find out, and what it became was it was just a huge distraction. And it wasn't something that I could, sit there and talk to people about and say, this is who I am. It wasn't an appropriate conversation.
Yeah.
And so people shouldn't have gotten to my business in the first place.
Now, what about the prisoners?
They were nosy.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the kids were like, the kids are going to be kids, you know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't take that personally, but it was just like, at some point I was like, he's like, y'all got to calm down. I got a job to do.
Yeah.
Like, this is a professional place. Like, I don't come here to, try to explain myself to you people. This isn't an appropriate place for it.
Exactly. Well, I guess
on the comedy stage, I can be blunt, I can be raw, and I can come back at people. You know, I had situations where, like, you know how you deal with hecklers. You come back at them.
Yeah.
I was dealing with kids. Sometimes I would come back at them. These are like hardened criminals. I would come back. They would start crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like, and then they'd be like, "Why were you talking to the kids like that?" I'm like, "They ain't killing me. They are roasting me alive." Anytime I came out of myself, all of a sudden it was a problem. So I was just like, well, I can't really be myself here.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. I mean, here you are, you're a teacher and you're trying to help, you know, kids that, you know, probably will never had help in their entire lives, and it's not just them that are giving you a hard time.
It was the other people that worked there they fostered like an inappropriate environment.
Yeah. I mean,
and I didn't like it.
I totally understand that. Now, what is it about, you said I can on stage, I can be raw in the workplace, and I get what you're saying, but is why the comedy stage? If you want to be who you are, why not be, you know, a one-man play or a writer or, you know, any kind of performance art? Why was it stand-up comedy that you chose then to express yourself?
Well, you know, I was originally, when I was in college and when I left college, I wrote screenplays.
Okay.
Because I was a big movie buff. But it's like, I think maybe of all the screenplays I wrote, I think 5 people in the world have ever read anything I've written.
Okay.
So that really was it. Just stand-up comedy gives you an access to audiences, to people.
Okay. Now, why is it important that other people know who you are? Like, I mean, obviously in the prison it wasn't the right situation, but let's say it was the right situation. What if there were other prisoners or other staff members that could come to you because they could relate to you on the fact that they were also gay or you know, any other thing besides straight? You know, why couldn't you be that? Why did it have to be?
I just don't like people talking to me like I'm not me.
Okay.
Talking to me like I'm some other person that they think it's awkward.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want somebody. You ever watch the movie? It's an Alfred Hitchcock movie. North by Northwest.
I have not seen that one. No, I was hoping I've seen something. I've not seen that one. No.
So in the movie, I mean, Alfred Hitchcock used to always do these. He did like a couple of movies. They were like mistaken identity.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, Cary Grant, he's just like some advertising executive. He's like a madman type guy.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he gets mistaken for a spy.
Okay.
And it just, like, turns his whole... He's just, like, in a fucking mess. For, like, 2 hours, he's getting chased. People are shooting at him. People are talking to him about shit that he doesn't know anything about. He ended up... a plane tried to run him down. Like, it's
I heard
like,
that scene, yeah.
When people have assumptions about you, you end up having to have a conversation and having to stand for things that don't have nothing to do with you.
Okay.
It's exhausting.
I can understand. And was it the fact that, you know, did it come to a head in the prison? Were these things that had happened your whole life in school? You had to be closeted, or people assumed things, or then you were in the frat house, and I'm not sure what kind of fraternity it was, but maybe you had to misrepresent yourself. Was it a whole slew of these things, and then it was just the hair that broke the camel's back at the prison?
Yeah, basically, I was just like, I started writing in a different way. I was like, I'm not going to write these fictional stories anymore. I'm going to write about myself and what I'm feeling, what I think, and how I perceive things. And then once I started doing that, it just started coming out of me. And then I was like, what do I do with all of this?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right.
It's like, what is the medium? And it was just obvious. It was stand-up comedy was it.
That's awesome. And now let's talk about some of the jokes, because, you know, how do you even write jokes about the fact that first of all, I just say, let me ask you this. When you came out as a comedian, was the response different? Is it false to assume that Philadelphia's comedy scene is liberal enough that they accepted you, or was that not a case? Was that not the case? Did you hit the same biases as a comic that you did in the prison?
No, I never really had a problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how did you start writing jokes about being gay? I mean, obviously, that's a very sensitive situation. It causes an anger in you when people misrepresent you and stuff like that, and when and people are making fun at you or whatever it happens to be. So how do you write a joke that can respect who you are, but then address the fact that you're gay and that it's not very obvious? I mean, the joke that you have on there is like, I don't have time to talk about. I get so obviously you're referring to the fact that it's not the stereotype that people automatically assume that.
Yeah.
So how do you write a joke like that? Because it's a great joke.
It came from the Raven, where I was there getting pushed at the Raven is 2:00 in the morning. You go on when you first start going there, and I was just like, I had this, this audience of people that are nodding out, and the hosts aren't even paying attention to you. So it's like, what can you say to get people's attention that really focuses people on you and who you really are?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of a true statement. It's like, it's not an easy thing for me to explain.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense when I first tell people. And there's not really anything that I can do to prove it to people that would be appropriate. So it's just like, it is what it is,
Yeah.
That was just me being honest,
Yeah, well, that's great, and that's something that I struggle with, and it's remarkable that you are able to if you're able to be yourself and be confident in, and it's funny. It's not like you don't do hack stuff based on this kind of thing. So when you're pulling together your jokes, and a lot of your your jokes are pretty much things that have happened in your life. So let's talk about kind of like how you get ideas for material. Do you sit down and think over your life and weird interactions, or you want to make sure you're represented well, and people walk away with a 100% picture of who Brandon Jackson is?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you then come up with ideas? I'm sure it's very different than somebody like Jerry Seinfeld, who notices a weird sign on the street and can write it down in a book, and then that becomes a bit. I'm assuming yours is more introspective than that. So how do you, if you can think of some of the jokes, like jokes about your time, the teacher at the prison, or the one I love was the overdraft fee. That was just a great. I mean, oh my God, that's such a fucking good joke. But the bus. Like how do you kind of sit down and come up with some of those bits, develop that idea?
It's really like whatever is weighing on me. I think a lot. It's really hard for me to turn my brain off.
Yeah.
It's like whatever is weighing on me, whatever I'm having anxiety about, it's something that I'm arguing with myself about. I'm thinking about it, and eventually it just kind of comes out as a bit.
Okay.
I don't really sit down and try to force writing anything, just because I've never really had any success writing that way.
Okay.
But it's just like, I'm just thinking about things, just my daily life, what I'm thinking about, and sometimes things come to become a bit. Then from there, you mold it.
Yeah.
You work on it.
But I mean, these are all very much things about who you are and that kind of stuff. Is it hard for you to not do jokes? Like, is it just your brain isn't like that of an observational comic or a one-liner? Is it your brain doesn't even function that way, or do you disregard material if you see like a bizarre situation and it has nothing to do with you? Is that discounted in your act? Is it always going to be, I need to make sure that this act is about things that I've experienced, about who I am, my interactions, my relationships, my friendships? Is it always about those things, or could it be outside the box of storytelling and personal insights?
Listen, I tried everything the hacks have tried to. It's not that I didn't try to do it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm not good at being insincere.
Yeah.
I'm just not good at it. And I think the audience can see when I'm being, the way I look at it is that I think a lot of it, I think people who can go on stage and can talk a lot of bullshit and be kind of hacky.
Yeah.
It's because they assume the audience can't tell what they're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what gives them the freedom just be like, I'm going to go up here and say a bunch of bullshit. Nobody knows that I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
Right? It's that's just what they do. But for me, I'm paranoid. I think everyone can see through me at all times. So it's like, why bother trying to bullshit people? They're going to be able to tell anyway.
Yeah.
Might as well just be honest.
Are you tortured? Do you feel like you're a tortured person? Things that you just mentioned, you're paranoid, things that you're anxious about, and you talked about like this anger that you had when you're little, and that, do you feel that there is a struggle? Like, do you feel like that? Like, do you know who you are? Do you think that you figured yourself out yet at this point?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, this is all a journey of self-discovery. Like, if I knew who I was, I would, have a different life. I'm doing stand-up comedy because I'm trying to figure it out. It's like comedy can be kind of like echolocation. You know how like whales and dolphins kind of like just put out sounds and see what reflects back to figure out where they are.
Yeah.
That's what comedy is to me. I'm just kind of putting stuff out there and seeing how people react to it. And then I'm like, all right, that makes sense. That's a part of who I am.
Oh, wow.
That badge on.
Just a quick plug and we'll get right back to the show. Have you checked out my website, markstodd.com? It gives you a whole wealth of information to how to see me live at shows. You can catch past Get to the Joke episodes and bonus content. And you can also check out some stand-up videos for myself. Please check out my website. Again, that's markstodd.com, markstaud.com. Come see me live. Also, please, once again, subscribe to this channel, like our videos, leave a comment. I'll get back to you. Now let's get back to the joke.
Right.
Now that's interesting that you just said that, because you talk about making sure that you're not misrepresented. Gosh, I can't talk now. I'm sorry. That you're not misrepresented. That people know who you are. But it's almost like if you say something and the audience grabs onto it and likes it, it becomes who you are. Now, what if that's not who you are? If it's a new bit.
I definitely have jokes that I've done that audiences like, where I'm just like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Even if the audience likes it. So it's like you're trying to find the middle ground of what is it that I really want to say that the audience is also picking up on. So now you're finding something that you have deep feelings about that other people also recognize in you.
Yeah.
So, that's a really, that you're finding how you connect with people.
Yeah.
Here's something that I feel deeply, and audiences also connect with it.
Okay, now let's go back to you telling the audience that you're gay. If an audience, how do you get an audience on board with that? There are areas unfortunately in this country where they automatically would shut down as soon as they hear. I'm sure you've seen it, and so.
Oh yeah.
How are you?
People shut down. Yeah.
So how are you connect when you put out an idea, not an idea, but when you put out something about who you are, and you can tell the audience is uncomfortable? And it's very new. Obviously, your bit about coming out is been developed and been worked on. But if you can kind of think back to maybe the very early stages of that joke when you really don't know what you're doing with it yet, how do you find out that you're connecting with an audience who maybe disagrees or thinks that it's a choice or thinks, or whatever it happens to be? Like, how do you work out a bit like that so that you can connect with people like that?
I think the thing about that joke, it's me saying, this is who I am, but I also understand that it's strange for some people. So it's like me saying, this is who I am. I'm not going to back down about it, but I also understand this might be challenging for some people, and I'm not judging you for that, and you shouldn't judge me either. So it's kind of like being like an equal footing.
Yeah.
Like, this is who I am. You don't have to like it, but just understand I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I also understand, it's just like kind of empathizing with the audience. It's like, I think there's a lot of attitude about, like, in comedy where people feel like if they're a part of a marginalized group, that it's, you know, the responsibility of the audience to empathize with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this isn't human resources. You're an entertainer.
Yeah.
You're on the stage. The people paid to see the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job to make people comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have an overarching goal. I want to talk about the larger things that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So first I need to make the audience comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And I like that. I like the HR bit, or the HR part of that. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess now, when you talk to an audience and the audience is uncomfortable for the first time, this is not the first time you've told somebody and they've been uncomfortable about it. I mean, you even referenced that your mom was not on board the first time you. Now, is that true?
Yeah.
Is that something that was true, or is it?
True. Yeah, it's a true story.
So what was that like then when you? I mean, I guess you said you were 17 when you came out to your mom. Now, what did was it something that like? Was it a bad story where it was like, I mean, you hear about people that are like kicked out of the house and want nothing to do with it or whatever. No. Okay, so that's good.
No, I think my mother just was like concerned. You know, that was what the thing was. She was just kind of expressing concern.
Yeah.
She was like worried that something had happened or that something was going to happen to me. So that's how I took it. The thing about it that was like really crazy was I really had that feeling of like being exposed.
Yeah.
It was something that I had kept in. I hadn't told anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like laying in bed that night, just feeling just kind of like my chest had been ripped open.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
Yeah. And it was just like a weird feeling.
Why? So, I mean, if you can this is kind of what this show is a little bit about too, is kind of like, you know, getting to know you on a level that I've never known you before. If you can kind of walk me through, you tell your mom this, and then between the time that you tell her and you're in bed and it feels like your stomach was ripped open, what was that space in between that led to that feeling? Obviously, if she embraced you with open arms, you wouldn't feel so ripped open. Was it just like she shut down and walked away, or what is it that occurred there?
I just remember just like not being, just kind of like I had to tell her.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the same thing with comedy where I was just like, I didn't want her to misconstrue who I was anymore.
Yeah.
I was tired of, you imagine like, you ever have a misunderstanding with someone?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awkward.
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing. It's stressful. Imagine if your whole life is a misunderstanding.
Oh gosh.
It's a lot, and it's eventually you get to the point where it's like I need to clear this up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna be under this burden forever.
Yeah. Now, has she come around today? Is she accepting, or is it still okay? Now, I mean, was there other blowback from other family members? I don't know what your dad's situation is. I don't know if you have siblings or what happened. You know, no. So it's just
I told my dad many years later.
Okay.
And I had a bit about that too, but he was just kind of like, I'm not happy about this, but, you know, me and my dad were always close. So
okay.
We were cool.
That's cool. That's good. So wait. If you guys were closer, then why did it take you so much longer to tell him?
It's just awkward because he was my dad.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. I guess like when you kind of bridge that gap with your parents, does it make it easier to bridge the gap with the audience on stage? Obviously, you and your mom are on way two different ends of the playing field, and now it's been mended. And when you see an audience that's on the other end then from you, like when you're doing a show in the middle of nowhere and you see do you know how to bridge that quicker than versus like doing it in the city?
It just depends, you know. I'm thinking of like a show I just did recently, and I think I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did one of your wine shows. It was like somewhere up in.
I could see where this could. Yeah.
Way north of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Like
Was it Blue Mountain up in New Tripoli?
I think so. It was when Mary Wazinski was headlining. I think.
Yeah.
So I've done shows. My problem with shows like that is that the audience is too specific. And that's where I get in trouble. Because what happens is if the audience is a bunch of different people, I can it's kind of like buckshot. I can kind of scatter shot them.
Yeah.
But what I noticed with specific audiences, and I did like a dinner party a couple weeks ago or a month ago in North Philly, where when I start opening up about things, instead of the audience kind of relating to me, they start group thinking, linking up with each other. And then they end up sharing a bunch of related thoughts that they have, and I end up left out.
Do you mean verbally?
I no longer have any control.
Do you mean verbally they're talking?
No, it's like psychologically. No, they're like linking up mentally. Like it's like they're psychic. They just start looking at each other, and it's like they all thinking the same thing. And it's like, you know, it's like you feel like you're Frankenstein's monster. But that's only when, you know, you're doing a show where it's like a bunch of different people that all know each other. They came there together. And I don't like doing shows like that because it doesn't really work for the way I do comedy, because I'm not the type of person to go up there and just be like, who are you? What do you do? How blah, 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 blah. I don't do a lot. I just talk about what I think and how I perceive the world. Is very thinky. So if people all know each other, they're going to start reflecting on each other about what I'm saying. And then it's like all their background knowledge based on who I am. And then it's like, do I address that? Do I try to figure out what they're talking about? And it's like, I'm really not interested.
Now, was this something that this kind of you know who you are, and you're not gonna fluctuate from that. Was that how you started when you started doing stand up, or were you someone who would have bent in a situation like that when you first started? Like, you would have caved to them,
definitely,
and got their approval.
Definitely.
Okay, so how did you learn to not give a shit about?
Just never worked.
Okay.
I cannot pander to people. It doesn't work for me. People don't buy it. People don't believe me. So it's just like, I just have to be myself. Nothing else works.
Okay. All right. Oh, cool. But so that this kind of going back to these anxieties that you have and this paranoia with, how you're coming off, though, as much as you try to put up and talk about how, it's like, it doesn't work for me to misrepresent myself or even bend a little bit into an area where I'm not completely comfortable going, you do experience anxiety and paranoia about what the audience is thinking about you. So is that something that you're just going to have to learn to deal with and live with as a stand-up comic, or are you working towards, kind of getting control of those anxieties and paranoia and stuff?
Well, when I'm doing stand-up all the time, I eventually get comfortable and I figure I get a rhythm going and, I figure out how to kind of connect with my audiences. And, it's really it's the same thing as like shooting a basketball. You're just trying to get in rhythm, just getting a lot of reps. There's no philosophy to it. You just got to get comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a reason that you don't talk about ideas that you have? Like, you don't talk about your standpoint on religion or your standpoint on, it's, you do have, with race you do, but you don't, are you doing maybe topical racial issues, or do you stay away from those? What I'm trying to think of ideas that you have, because being gay is who you are, but ideas as far as politics and religion and socioeconomic statuses and race and stuff like that. Do you have jokes where you give the audience your set of beliefs, or is that territory that you don't go down because it's an idea, not a part of your DNA makeup?
I do, but those are probably longer bits, and you probably wouldn't see them in videos that I have in my sets.
Yeah.
I definitely did a lot more of that this summer when things were opening back up.
Yeah.
But I definitely have my own ideas on things. I think sometimes I am expressing my ideas, but because they're not typical of the current political discourse, I think people maybe don't recognize them as political opinions. Sometimes I maybe kind of split the difference and hedge maybe a little bit. Not because I'm trying to be a coward or anything like that. It's just because that's just how I really feel.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, obviously, do you do political humor or not? And by political humor, I don't mean like just Trump jokes or whatever, or Hillary jokes. But like, do you make sure that you are writing material that is topical and talks about current things going on right now, like George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and any of the other, like, the insurrection at the Capitol? Are these things that you write about, or is it like you want a bit that will stay without time, and maybe some of these things are current in the moment things, and maybe 10 years from now won't be like super.
Yeah, I was talking about a lot of that stuff this summer. When things were just opening up in Delaware. There was like this one open mic, and it was just like I had a lot of stuff to get off my chest.
Yeah.
And I did talk about a lot of that stuff, but as I've gotten back, I write a lot of bits.
Yeah.
And then when I end up with an opportunity to showcase, I want to do the bits that I think are really funny, or the ones that I think are really relatable and translate, and the jokes that are the most consistent, and that usually is not the political material.
I get it. So can you kind of walk me through then, when you do write something where you are writing from a certain viewpoint and you know that there is a equal and opposite viewpoint to what you write, how do you write a joke like that so that you can, kind of going back to how you tell people that you're gay, you say like, hey, you address it and kind of like say, hey, I understand it's strange for you. You're kind of bringing them in, and you're like making it okay for them to be a little bit weirded out about it, which again, why we still do that in 2021 beyond me. But how do you do that now with things that are more fluid, like political thought? I mean, your political thought could be different 10 years from now. We don't know. But, so tell me how you kind of approach a joke that way.
I remember one of my favorite comedians ever is Patrice O'Neal.
Oh, yeah.
And Patrice O'Neal would say a lot of crazy fucked up things that probably no one agrees with. But the reason that those jokes worked was that he never approached it from the idea of, this joke is about how I'm right about this. That's what a lot of people do with political jokes. The point of this joke is that I'm right and that people who disagree with me are wrong. Okay. Well, then, obviously, you're drawing a line in the sand with that joke. What Patrice would do is like, I'm not presenting this joke to the audience as an argument, but it's an illustration. It's an illustration of how I feel and how I see the world. And I understand that it sounds ridiculous to people, and I'm going to lean into that ridiculousness and make it absurd. Yeah. And that's what I try to do. I'm just like, I understand that people have different views about this, and I understand that my idea could sound crazy to some people, so I'm going to acknowledge that. But I'm also going to try to make you understand where I'm coming from. But it's not this argument of like, I'm right, you're wrong. Yeah. I just don't see the world that way. Okay. So I see what that bit, and trying to not be like, I'm right, you're wrong. You're pretty much, this is how I feel, and this is you bring it back to your experience, which I think is important. Do you have a joke where you don't have an experience to back it up with, that you make a point on, whether it's maybe... I've gotten booed. Oh, really? So would your advice be, don't do jokes then, that if it's like, hey, if for instance, like, is religion the hardest topic to tackle in comedy? I was listening to another podcast. I forget what it's called, but it's this guy, Harrison Tweed, has a podcast about comedy. He's a comedian in New York. Okay. But he was interviewing a comic, and the comic he was interviewing made this brilliant argument about, audiences getting offended or audiences getting sensitive. And I think people make this assumption that when audiences don't like a joke, it's because they're sensitive or because they're offended by the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if you ask the audience, they would say that. They would say, oh, I was offended by that topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in reality, you can get away with saying, talking about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And what the argument that this comic made was, he said, the responsibility as the artist, as the performer on stage, you have to do the heavy emotional lifting for the audience.
Okay. What does that mean? I guess what does that mean?
It means you have to do it. You have to think through this idea and do the work of thinking a lot about it and trying to make it funny and trying to dig deep into it and find the interesting kernel and the punch that hits the audience.
Okay.
That's your job. I think sometimes comedians will just take a bunch of uncomfortable ideas and just throw it at the audience.
Yeah.
And then the audience is stuck there trying to juggle with all. They're just like, what do I do with Catholic child molestation, pedophilia? What am I? Like, it's just like it becomes a burden that you're putting on the audience. So, you have to be sure that when you do the bit, that you're getting the ideas out quickly and that the joke is hitting the audience with a punch. And not a series of waves of stress.
Yeah.
So, but that's the difference that means. So, like, I think a lot of comedians are like, oh, the audience was sensitive and they didn't like that. I'm like, maybe you didn't think through it.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you didn't organize this well, and the audience is spending too much time sitting there thinking about the uncomfortable topic that you brought up. And then there's also, this is a whole nother point. Sometimes you're not a famous comedian and you just don't have the credibility with an audience to get away with bringing up these topics. They don't trust you.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, somebody goes to see Louis C.K., if they're a big Louis C.K. fan, if he just goes, Louis C.K. just goes, so child rape, and like he'll be... There's a lot of people who aren't Louis C.K. fans, like, oh my God, he's talking about child rape. But then, like, there's his fans, they're going to be like, ooh, I want to see what he does with this.
Yeah. I see.
And it has nothing to do with the actual topic. It has to do with
the precedent that's been set.
The audience wants to see what this guy does with this topic.
Yeah. You
want to see them do the mental hula hoops,
Okay. I like that. Man. So let's talk about your joke writing. We talked about how your approach to certain topics were, but let's talk about the actual joke. And thank you very much for sending me the screenshots of your bit for the digital houses. I think that was great. And maybe walk into, I think what it sounds like this. If you want to give some background to people, like I'm going to put this up on the web or on the web series, your examples that you sent, but. If you're using an analogy, which is where I thought you were going with the way you kind of mapped it out or whatever, can you first describe how you came up with the overdraft protection analogy? Because I love that joke. That joke was so good and funny, and the analogy between the overspending in your account and falling off the Grand Canyon was a great analogy. So can you kind of approach how you tackled that analogy and how you wrote that specific joke and came up with it, and then kind of talk about your process now with this digital house joke that you're developing?
The overdraft thing came kind of naturally. That was just like the first idea that came to me. I was just talking to myself about it, and I was like, what is this like? And the cliff thing came to me, and from what I remember, that came very quickly. And that was one of those jokes that it just kind of came out fully formed.
Wow, okay. Now, you said you talk to yourself. What does that mean? Do you not write anything down?
I just kind of ramble to myself. Yeah, I can't really do much by sitting and writing.
Okay.
It's not really. I have to get up. I actually have two different writing processes.
I would love to hear them.
One with me kind of just wandering around the kitchen island.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of walking in circles around it, talking to myself. And the other process is me like laying in bed, wrapped up in 2 covers and sheets, and just kind of talking to myself, laying in bed. And I don't know what it is. It's like either walking or being very stationary, but like I could not write a joke like this, like sitting in a chair.
Okay. No, well, I mean, that's now. Let me tell you. So you're walking around your kitchen. I want to be there in the room with you, which would probably make you very uncomfortable if I was just watching you. But you know, you're walking around the kitchen island, or you're in your bed, and you're talking to yourself, and you come up with this analogy between overspending, Grand Canyon. Does that just stay in your mind until you can get to a stage, or do you have to jot it down? Do you throw it in your phone?
Yeah, I write down the main ideas of what I'm thinking. I usually don't try to write things out word for word until I've been doing the joke for a while.
Okay. Does that get developed on stage then, or do you have a pretty good outline that you follow on stage, or do you go on stage with maybe knowing like, hey, I got 50% of it down, and the other 50% is going to come out in the next 15 minutes while I'm up here?
I usually come on stage with, I have my formula.
Okay.
Not a formula, but I have my my outline. I have my outline of ideas. So there's the premise, and then there's the setup, and then there's my punchlines and my tags.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think of it that way, but I have them. And I'm also thinking of the rhythm that I'm going to say it in, how I'm going to time it, how I'm thinking that the audience might react to different parts of it. By the time I bring a joke to the stage, I've thought about all of that.
What do you mean by rhythm? What do you mean the rhythm that you're going to tell a joke? What's that mean?
Yeah, like where the pauses are, where you where the intonation is, where I stop, where I might speed up.
Okay.
I don't write that down.
Yeah.
But it's just something I'm practicing in my mind. I'm like, what is the where I kind of think of when I was. So I got like I got my master's degree in teaching English as a second language. So I studied linguistics. And one of the most important classes I took this advanced methods in teaching listening and speaking. And it talked about, there was this book that we read called Clear Speech.
Okay.
And it talked about like what actually makes speech intelligible. What makes speech coherent? What makes speech, especially in English, what makes it easy for people to understand? And that's basically what a punchline is when people laugh. Yeah. They're laughing because they've understood a lot of information at one time. Yeah. It's a dense, right? And so it's kind of like a punch, like a punch. There's a lot of power. Yeah. There's a lot of ideas that they've connected between your setup and your punchline, and it's all hitting them at once. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So the best way to do that is you have to be careful about how you say things. So I'm trying to think of the example. I think the biggest mistake you can make in comedy is talking past the audience. Okay. What do you mean by that? You said more things than the audience can understand. Okay. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You're talking, they still need time to process the last thing you said, and now you're saying the third thing. Okay. So how are they gonna laugh at the third thing you said when they haven't finished thinking about the first thing you said? That's timing. That's what comedic timing is. Yeah. I've said this. I'm waiting for the audience to process that. Then I say the next thing. I wait for them to process that. And then I say the next thing, and they're ready to process that. That's all comedic timing is. You're just kind of anticipating how long it takes the audience to understand something and when they're ready to digest the next idea. Because if you say the punchline and they're still thinking about the setup, it's not going to hit. Okay. So they're not ready. So how do you mitigate that? How do you make sure when you're writing the setup, especially if you're putting a lot into that setup? You talked about the fact that you're putting a lot of information in at one time, and so the punch can be delivered. What are some of the things that you do
to make sure that the audience is I mean, you talked about timing. I get that part, but the content of what you're saying. How do you? What are some of the processes that you do to understand if the audience is getting on board with what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have much to do with the content. It's about
Okay.
being in the room
Okay.
and just kind of being able to perceive the feelings in the room.
Okay.
I can feel it. I don't know if anybody else can, but like, it's because I teach.
Yeah.
And so, I teach foreigners.
Yeah.
I teach English to foreigners. So I need to always be aware of how much my students understand.
Okay.
And whether they're ready to move on.
Yeah.
And if they're not ready to move on, then I got to go back.
Okay.
Or I have to give them more time to process.
Okay.
So that's something you just build up an intuition about. And I think great comedians also do that. They build up an intuition about how people normally process information.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I mean, it's I like that example where you're talking. I mean, well, your real life experience with teaching foreigners and then checking for comprehension and then doing the same on stage. Now, I would argue that you are under almost like a time bomb on stage, meaning that like when you're in the classroom, you're much more relaxed. You can take your time. You can, put out the information, see if they're on board, judge it, do it again, or go on. I mean, it doesn't seem like you're almost trying, like to take as much time as you need in the classroom. Or on stage, do you feel the pressure to be like, I have to say something funny in the first 10 seconds, or this show is going to go off the rails real quick?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't feel that pressure anymore. When I was younger and I first started doing stand-up, you felt like I have to say something. I have to get... Like, I remember rushing. I would rush to the punchline. I'm like, I got to get to the punchline right away. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm going to lose the audience. That was some idea I had in my head. I got to say the joke so fast that the audience doesn't have time to focus on something else.
Yeah.
And that was just completely wrong.
Yeah.
You have to give the audience time to process things.
Okay.
I remember my mother has a friend from New York who she's a very religious lady, and she sends us all these like Bible
scriptures
verses all the time, scripture.
And,
and so one time she was here staying with us, and she was like, your mother's been telling me about your comedy. I want to see it. I want to see it. And I was like, oh God, I think that she's going to like freak out at me about the content of this bit. So like I showed her the video, and it was like me at Helium. Mm-hmm. This is from a long time ago. It was from like 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I showed a bit, and I'm expecting her to be like, I can't believe you're talking about these things. You should be ashamed of yourself. Jesus doesn't like this. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But she was from New York. She's from the Bronx.
Yeah.
So she listened to it and she goes, "What is this? What is this? I don't know what this is." And I'm like, "It's my comedy." I'm like, "Is it a problem?" She's like, "This isn't comedy." And I was like, "Why not?" She's like, "There's people laughing and you're talking over them." Like I can't understand what you're saying because you're talking over yourself, you're talking over the audience, and it was like she really understood comedy. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. This is when I was like a year and a half in. She's like, you gotta wait, you gotta be patient. Yeah, you're talking too much.
That's cool. I like that story. Now, kind of going back to this joke you sent me for the digital houses, can you kind of walk me through your process right now? Kind of give it to me from the walking around the island or in the bed standpoint and what you're doing to cultivate this joke. First of all, where'd the idea come from, that joke?
I just saw a story on CNN where they were like, somebody spent $500,000 on a digital house. And I was like, it's one of those news stories where it's like, most news headlines, I just read them and I'm like, I can understand what they're talking about. I'm like, all right, I don't need to read this. But this is one of those where I don't know what the fuck this means. I got no idea what this means. It's usually how I end up clicking on an article. Yeah. So I clicked on it and I found out that it was somebody had them to design like a digital house, like a house that would be like in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And this person bought this, and I was like, I don't understand why you would pay $500,000 for something like anybody could get, but it was like, it's like encrypted.
Okay.
So that nobody else can get it, or if they do get it, it would be like somebody, you could be like, that's my house. Like on my computer, there's like this. You got my house on your computer. Like, is that trespassing? If somebody has their house as your house on their computer, can you shoot them? Just because they have your house on a flash drive? That's what I was thinking of. Like, can you get fucking, what is it? Can you stand your ground in somebody else's bedroom because they have your house on their computer?
I really like where your head's going. So you're making this news story that is very bizarre and I've never heard of anything like this, very unique. And now you're putting some very topical, current event-y context on it. Obviously, all this stuff you're hitting on is in the news. So now where does this grid come into place? You sent me a grid, which I'm going to flash up here right now. Where does that come in? How does that work out in your process?
So the grid, I don't usually use the grid to write jokes.
Okay.
The grid I came up with just to kind of, I have a bunch of different comedy books.
What do you mean by that?
I have some of them.
Oh, I'd love to see them.
So if anybody is watching this that wants to learn how to do comedy, I think I have another book down. Let's see it. All right, so I have Comedy Writing Secrets.
Okay.
By Mel Hellis. All these books are written by Jews. The Comedy Bible. I think everyone knows this one.
I have that one too. Yeah.
This one is like I fucked this book up. It's like in pieces. I don't know what happened, but it's like everything. I've tore through it too many times. I have The Writer's Journey, which is more of a story writing book.
Okay.
About screenwriting and writing books.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And this is the book Clear Speech that I was telling you about. This is like a listening speaking textbook. And I also have this book, Poking a Dead Frog.
Okay.
I didn't really like this book. I didn't find it very helpful.
Okay.
But I basically took everything that I learned from the different comedy books and comedy websites and comedy blogs that I read, and I tried to create a cognitive tool out of it. So basically, a cognitive tool is something we use in teaching language, where the idea is that if you study educational psychology, they tell you, like, it's somewhere in the books, they'll tell you, like, exactly what is the estimation of how many megabytes your brain can hold and focus on at one time. Okay. And so there's a limit. Your brain can only focus on so much information at one time. Yeah. And that gets into how you're talking about how much can audiences process before you tell them the next thing. Yeah. You got to think about that. How long do you think it might take them to understand this before they're ready to hear something else? So what a cognitive tool is you create like a chart where people can write down ideas and organize them to hold that information so that they don't have to hold it in their brain. Okay. All right. Makes sense. And therefore they have mental space in their brain free to process and be creative, and they don't have to use that space to hold information because it's in the cognitive tool. Okay. Cool. So give me an idea of like the grid that you're using then. So how does that relate to the grid with the vinyl records and the digital house? So the grid is, I tried to figure out, let me pull this up. Sure, go ahead. Just so I can look at it. No problem. This is cool, man. This is great. This is very intellectual. I appreciate it. It's not coming up. Oh, there, new joke chart. What the fuck? Come on now. Oh, here it is. So basically, I'm trying to write down ideas so that I can just put them in a chart so I don't have to hold them in my brain.
Yeah.
The idea is that it would free you up to be more creative.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think, what is the topic?
Mm-hmm.
What is my attitude about the topic? What is the target? This is stuff that I got out of the comedy books.
Yeah.
And then I try to think of what is the context that the audience understands this topic. What are they thinking about this topic?
Yeah.
What are their expectations?
Yeah.
And then I think, what's realistic about this topic? And then how can I exaggerate it? Because one of the things you have to do with a joke, you have to ground it in something realistic. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the audience can't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, so what do you mean by that? I guess do you mind clarifying that?
It has to exist in a space that the audience can imagine. That's real. Something that they can relate to. Otherwise, it's like, why would they have an emotional response to it?
I see what you're saying.
Not real.
So you're talking about a digital house. The audience is not gonna relate to a digital house. None of them are gonna have a digital house. They probably never read that article. So you're saying that you need to compare it then to something else that they would be able to. Am I on the right track with that? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think the thing that the reason a lot of people do topical humor is you can talk about ridiculous things.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, I saw it in the paper, so it's real.
Yeah.
So you can't fucking question it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's it. But most of the time, if you're not doing topical humor, you have to say something that audiences can kind of relate to.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, man.
So for the digital houses thing, it doesn't really fit into that. The real, that people can be like, okay, I understand. Then you can start exaggerating and saying, oh, when I say like shooting someone because they have a copy of your house on their computer, that's an exaggeration.
Do you tend to lean more towards exaggeration, or do you like to make it silly? I feel like those are two different things. Like comics, when they want to approach something digital house is not a serious topic, but I've noticed when comics want to do something that's, they're trying to get a point across and it might be a more serious nature, they'll either exaggerate the hell out of it or they will make it silly in some way. Do you know what that, like, do you understand like kind of what I'm saying? Am I saying that correctly? Do you try to make it silly or exaggerate most of the times?
This was something that I realized a couple years ago, especially when I was in New York. Mm-hmm. Because when I was in New York, I saw a lot of people do a lot of absurd humor in New York. Okay. A lot of like ridiculous things. And I saw a lot of people doing that and getting a lot of laughs. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try that. I should try to be absurd and make things more ridiculous. My jokes are maybe too conventional, maybe. I thought I wasn't doing enough.
Yeah, okay.
So I tried to, I'm going to make my jokes more ridiculous. I'm going to exaggerate them more. I'm going to make them more absurd, and maybe people will laugh more then. And it did not work.
Okay. All right.
People were so confused. About what I was saying. People were lost, and I was lost, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. What I eventually realized, because from talking to people were like, we don't know what you're like going crazy. I'm like, but that's what people are doing. They're being absurd. What I eventually realized is that I think some people think that I'm like maybe a little effortlessly funny, that it seems kind of natural and calm and confident.
I get that, but I know that there's a lot of work that went behind that, though.
I don't really relate to that.
Okay.
The thing is like, I remember when I was starting to do, my friends were the ones who encouraged me to do stand-up. They told me I was so fucking funny. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
They were like, you're the funniest person we know. You're so hilarious. You should try stand up. And I was like, I'm not funny. I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes they would laugh at random things I would say, but I was never saying those things to be funny.
Yeah.
And what I realized was my perception of when I say something on stage, and I have a little bit more understanding of it now.
Mm-hmm.
But when I say something, usually when I say something really funny on stage, I'm just trying to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because what makes sense to me, what I think is logical,
Mm-hmm.
is like absurd to other people.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
I naturally exaggerate things, even when I'm being calm.
Okay.
Even when I'm just being relaxed.
Yeah.
I exaggerate things, and I'll say crazy stuff, but I'll say it in a calm tone. It's not because I'm trying to understate. It's because it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But other people were like, that's crazy. So people laugh at just normal ideas I have because it's absurd to people. So when I was in New York trying, my idea of what's absurd is incomprehensible to people.
Yeah.
It's not, it's too far. So like I can't, there's no reason for me to try to make things more absurd, because what I'm saying, what I think normally is already absurd, even when I'm calm.
Okay.
So I don't have to put any kind of effort into it.
Okay. Okay, so then where does this, so going on this exaggerated notion and this concept tool that you developed, and this chart that you don't normally do, but it makes sense in this situation, where does that joke go from here? Are you taking that chart up on stage with you as a reference and then working it out up there? Where will the joke go from this chart to when eventually we'll see it on a clip or an album, or where it happens to exist, or a special one day?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm using this chart, I'm really struggling. It's like, because it's usually this digital houses bit. This is not something that I would normally talk about.
Because it's not about you.
I don't do a lot of humor. It's not about me.
Yeah.
So then I'm like trying to work very extra hard to try to make it work, but I don't think it would work. Even if I got the joke to work, I don't know where I would fit it in to my set.
Are you doing it because you want the challenge of doing something different? I mean, like you said, this has nothing to do with you. You want the challenge of can I take...
It's more of a challenge.
I like that. I like that you're doing that. Cool, man. Cool, dude.
It's more of an exercise and practice. Like I play street ball, so I go on the courts and play basketball all the time, and I work on my shot. I never shoot in the game. All I do in the game is rebound. I do putbacks, layups.
Yeah.
Pass really well out of the post. I never shoot. But when I'm practicing, I'm like, well, work on my shot is good exercise.
Yeah. Okay.
I might have to shoot in the game, but it's like that's what the digital houses thing. It's like maybe someday I'll end up having to do an hour somewhere, and I got a pool.
I hope I see it, man.
But I don't know.
Well, so I guess when you tell jokes on stage, and you kind of pointed this out because you talked about your rhythm and the timing that you're very conscious about, and you talk about your demeanor, but that you're also paranoid about what the audience is thinking. How do you keep yourself? Because you said very early on you would rush to get to the punchline, but now you take a more deliberate and it's kind of the approach that you have with your students. How do you not get freaked out if a joke is starting to bomb, especially if a joke that usually doesn't bomb in other rooms? How do you maintain this very level-headed, calm focus throughout with all these other things going on, all these other external factors?
I don't know.
You're just a cool guy. You're just much cooler than me.
I don't know. I mean, listen, I've definitely been in situations where I think for me, those really hard shows are not that common. most of the time, doing comedy, the audience is sitting there waiting for you to tell them a funny joke.
Okay.
And I know I have that. So that's, I guess, what my confidence comes from is like, even sometimes where like the crowd is rowdy, I'm just like, well, eventually they'll settle down.
Okay.
And I'll be able to get into this. But I'm not going to try to be something else just because they're out of pocket right now. I just like, it's like the same thing where I talk about basketball. It's like I'm not a shooter. I'm not going to start shooting just because
it's getting
people are leaving me open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, I'm going to try to find my spots. I'm going to try to get to my spots and score where I score.
Okay.
And with comedy, sometimes audiences are bad, but I'm not going to change the way I do comedy just because some audiences are bad.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like kind of playing to this very rare situation where it's shitty.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, you guys are shitty, but 98% of the times I do comedy,
yeah,
I don't have this problem.
Yeah.
So it's like,
fair enough. So do you record yourself on stage? Like, how do you go back and revisit, especially new bits that you've done? How do you revisit those bits, and how do you work on them to make them better?
Yeah, I record everything. I go back. I have probably 5 gigabytes on my computer of listening notes where I like go back and listen to a set and take notes.
Oh, whoa. What do you mean by that? I never heard, no comics have talked about listening notes. What do you mean by that?
I go back and listen to the set, and I take notes based on...
Oh, you mean like on the computer then? So you have like an actual no... Oh, wow, okay. I didn't know if you were like talking into, like you're listening, you're watching yourself on the computer, had like a dictaphone or something that you were talking into or something. Okay. So you actually
take notes.
Okay.
And I used to do it, it's like how it's evolved. When I first started doing comedy, I would just write down the jokes that I did in the set, and I would put stars next to it. This joke gets 4 stars. This joke gets 1 star. This joke gets no stars. This joke gets 2.5. So that's how I used to originally do it, and I would just be like, all right, these are the good jokes. They're the ones that always get 3.5 or more stars. Those are the jokes that are going into my set. But as I got deeper into it, I'd be like, this is a specific thing that I said that got a laugh.
Okay.
Or these are the 2 jokes that went together that got a laugh. This is the way I said this word. This is where I said the intonation to get this laugh. So it's gotten more specific.
Okay. All right. And so then do you have does your joke develop through certain stages? So if you have a new joke, it starts getting some traction. Do you move it into, like, how do you move it into your, like from like a showcase set to a headline set? Like, do your jokes make a progression throughout your act? Like, do they exist? Does a joke have to hit like X amount of times for it to be something you would tell at Helium? Or like, if the joke's funny at an open mic 4 times and it worked 1 time at like a bar show, will that be said then at like a club kind of situation? Or is there any kind of fight, like a journey that your joke takes from?
Yeah, there's only one set that I'm picky about what jokes I put in, and that's if I'm auditioning for something.
Okay.
And then I'll be like, all right, only the consistent jokes that go together go into this set.
Okay.
But most of the time, I just do the bits that I want to do.
Okay. Cool, man. Awesome, dude. So before we get into the compilation kind of questions, I want to talk about your career a little bit. So obviously you are, I would say you are a mainstay in Philadelphia. I mean, you've gotten 2nd place at Philly's Funniest a few times, right?
I was 2nd place 1 time, and I was in the finals 3 times.
So what's that like then? Like, is that how you got into Helium by placing high into? Okay.
Yeah, they didn't know who I was before. I'd never been there before until I started doing the competition.
Okay, because you're a Delaware. You live in Delaware, but then you would travel to Philly to do shows. and then eventually you went to New York. When did you decide it was time to make that trip and to get a house?
To go to New York?
Yeah.
So that was actually related to Philly's Funniest.
Okay.
So I was doing Philly's Funniest, I think in 2017. It was the summer after I got my master's degree. I moved to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the year I got second place. I came second to Abby Rosenquist.
Yeah.
And, they have like the judges
Mm-hmm.
that they bring in guest judges.
Yeah.
One of the judges was an owner of a comedy club in New York.
Okay.
And he emailed me. He got my contact information from Helium.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I want you to come up to New York and meet with us. And I want you to do some sets at our club.
Cool.
So I went up to the Stand.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Stand Comedy Club in New York. It was Chris Italia. I went up there. I met with them. They were like, yeah, you got to move to New York. You can't stay in Philly.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, all right. And then I went to their club. I did some sets, and the sets were like, it was awkward.
Why? Well,
Never did comedy in a club in New York before. It was weird.
What was it? Why was it weird?
I don't know. I just was like, I think at that time, this was like 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I would be funny, but not because I knew what I was doing. I had like happened upon some funniness.
Do you believe that? Wait, you believe that? You don't believe that you were funny on your own merit?
No, I mean, I was funny on my own merit, but I didn't explicitly know what I was doing. I had just kind of sculpted, like the echolocation thing. I had just kind of sculpted this set out of audience reactions. I was like, this is what's funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I put this together, but I didn't really understand what I was doing that was funny. So when I went to New York, it was just like, I don't know how to make, I don't know what's funny about me. So it's like I'm just kind of talking and hoping that this is, because I wasn't as comfortable.
Well, I mean, so a club owner tells you to move up there, and so you do. But you had a job here in Delaware, so how did you just quit and leave and come?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I gave him my notice. I said I'm going to New York. Well, my that summer, so like that. They told me to move up, but I wasn't comfortable moving at that time. Mm-hmm. I had just bought a car,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to move to New York. I bought a new car. I had payments and stuff. And, I was enjoying living in Philadelphia, but
mm-hmm.
I was also, like, could not find work. I didn't know what I was going to do for money.
Yeah.
I couldn't even make a living in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So it was like, how am I going to make a living in New York? And I ended up kind of running back to Delaware with my tail between my legs. And then I got a job at the University of Delaware where I went, and it was a good job, and they were paying me good money, and
mm-hmm.
I was able to pay my debts. And I was
mm-hmm.
like, well, I can't leave this to go to New York. But I ended up saving up like $10,000.
Nice.
And that summer, my father died.
Oh, wow.
And, that really pushed me to, like, think, well, it's time to, I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to turn 30. I was like, if I'm going to move to New York, I got to do it now.
Yeah. I get that.
My dad used to tell me stories. My dad grew up in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I used to drive to New York every weekend.
What was he? Was he an artist?
No, he was like partying. It was the 70s. So he was like, I used to drive to New York every weekend. Just go up there, park my car, and I'm like, my dad was going up to New York up and back when he was my age. Why am I still in Delaware? I gotta sow my oats. I gotta do it. So, after he died, I realized I gotta do this.
Okay.
This probably before I get too old. Because right now I'm just like, I'll never move back to New York. I'm definitely like too old to do it now. So I'm just like, I'm glad I did it. It was definitely tough.
Yeah.
But I had to do it before it was too late. And definitely I got in at the last minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, oh my gosh, could you imagine being up there during COVID? Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I mean, I'm trying to piece together in my brain what you just kind of said. So your father passes away, and you kind of have like not a midlife crisis, but you kind of have like you're like I think like your mortality hit for the first time in
Yeah.
your entire life, and you felt that did you feel that like I've not done much with my life and I need to do something, and so you felt that New
It felt
York
like
was
I had to do New York. I'd
yeah.
never lived there. I'd never really like put all my all into stand up, and I wanted to try it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, you say you're not, do you feel that you can still become the comic that you want to be and not be in New York?
I mean, everything's different now.
Yeah.
So much has changed in 2 years.
Yeah.
Where I went to New York because I thought that was where I had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't think it matters where you are anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a certain culture in the New York comedy scene where, people, I saw what people wanted and what there was to gain from New York.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of different things. You could become a writer on one of these TV shows that
Mm-hmm.
are very political.
Mm-hmm.
You can become a regular at a club.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can, be one of these like artsy fartsy weirdos that just kind of wanders around Brooklyn spouting out mania. And I really thought about it. I was like, I don't want any of those things. And those are the things that really is like, that's what New York affords you.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a club comic?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to write for Stephen Colbert?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do any of those things.
Okay. Fair enough.
So what do I really need to be there for?
Fair enough. So I guess like what is the ultimate goal for you then? If I was a genie, I can give you whatever wish you wanted in comedy. What would be that?
Whatever. For the genie, if I get asked a genie, I would want to learn a lot of different languages.
No, I'm talking about stand-up comedy way.
No, this is stand-up comedy.
Oh, okay. All right. You want to learn? Okay, I'm sorry.
I would like to learn a lot of different languages and go around the world being funny and talking to people all over the world.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. How many languages do you know?
I know one. I know some Spanish. That's about it.
Okay, cool, man. Well, I mean, and do you feel? I guess let me go ahead and just ask you the question. By not being in New York, by being in Delaware, and now being maybe a big fish in a small pond, being Philadelphia, Delaware, do you feel that this dream of yours has a ceiling now? Do you feel that like maybe before you thought that your name would be a part of a Netflix special, and now you might be doing, be headlining shows, in the Ramada Inn, in Allentown kind of thing? Do you feel the ceiling now that you are in Delaware, or do you think that the sky's the limit still?
I feel like there's less of a ceiling. I think if anything, COVID has, and especially like COVID and the political environment of this country has kind of wiped out a lot of what comedy is. It's like you can do. I just don't think it's worth doing. The path that they have for being a famous comic, it's like you got to make your own path. Some of my favorite comics are people that kind of like, blaze the trail. I'm not sure what that trail is for me yet. Cool. I know that I have to figure that out, but I know I'm not going to follow some conventional path because I just can't bullshit people. I'm just not good at it.
Yeah.
I can't lie to myself. I can't lie to other people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to figure out what's honest for me.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I guess I want to ask, has your dad ever seen you perform? And
Oh
what
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and what was his thoughts like? What was his thoughts when he heard you do comedy? What kind of feedback did he give you? Maybe like the last time. Maybe like the last time he did hear you.
My dad was really happy for me that I found something
Mm-hmm.
that I was
Cool.
passionate about.
Cool.
Yeah, he was happy for me.
Was his death sudden, or was it?
And he got cancer.
Oh, okay.
Died pretty slowly. It was rough.
Were you able to have that moment with him where you kind of like?
No, because
No.
he had a stroke and he couldn't talk for like the last 6 months of his life.
Okay. Now, in that perspective, then, and this kind of guard that you keep up, and because you didn't really get that moment with your father, do you feel that you are going forward be more open with other people, because it seems like you enjoy being on your own terms, and even you don't run your jokes by other people unless they specifically ask you, like, do you see yourself being more open and having more of these kind of deeper conversations, now that you seem like you have a sense of your mortality? That's why you went to New York at 30 years old.
I'm open. I'm always willing to talk shop and talk comedy. I think the issue is that I don't think people really understand.
You don't people understand you?
No.
What do they understand?
And I don't know really how to communicate it.
I don't know what. I guess I don't know what you mean. Maybe that's what you mean.
Yeah. It's complicated. Like I just I've had a lot of, like today I just got I went to the dentist today.
Mm-hmm.
I got this tooth molded over. I got a cap on this tooth.
Okay.
I've had like really fucked up teeth for like a long
Oh,
time.
really?
Like rotten. I don't think most people can notice it because I don't smile that much. I'm like thinking now, just like, I want to get my teeth fixed. I want to get some of these dents fixed on my car. I want to get my own place. I want to have my own life. I think I've been just kind of fucking around for the last 10 years.
Interesting.
And I'm kind of ready to become an adult.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure. I'm finally I think I sought out stand-up comedy because I got respect from it. I felt accepted for who I was. And now, for the first time ever, I'm starting to feel professionally at my job, in my career, feel respected and appreciated for who I am as a creative individual. And I'm starting to see more opportunities there. So now I'm thinking, do I need to do stand-up?
Oh, wow.
Can I still be the funny, creative person I am?
So you're talking about your day job now. You're talking about your day job that you get. Not okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about.
But I see it becoming so much more.
Okay.
Even some of the opportunities I'm seeing on the horizon. We're having a professional development retreat on Friday, and I'm being asked to present.
Wow.
At the PD from some new things that I've been using in my classroom. I just talked about it, and they were like, "We want you to show us how you do this."
Awesome.
I created a class. I created a whole class. It was just voted to be accredited by the faculty.
Awesome.
I have a new part-time job where I just find very intellectually challenging and interesting, and I have another job that I'm applying for that I think would really take my skills as a writer and as a creative person and as a language teacher and put it on an international scale.
Interesting. So you're actually considering walking away from stand-up comedy for good?
I think I'm walking away from the stand-up comedy business. I'm not walking away from being a funny person who,
Yeah.
like, I still see myself, even if I go deep into language learning, language teaching and education, I still see myself being a person that's going to travel around the world talking about this in front of audiences and being a public front person.
Wow.
So I still get to be funny and talk, but I don't have to be a clown for people, and I don't have to perform for drink tickets and chicken fingers.
Wow. Okay. That's big. That's a big moment.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Well, good luck, dude. That's awesome. I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to hear that your outside comedy life, whatever that's considered, is going very well. That's awesome, man. You're certainly a good
I'm
dude
happy
and
about
deserve it. Brand, this was awesome, man. I appreciate it. I wrote down something here, and I'm going to ask you the question, and then I'll tell you who I wrote down here. And this is probably maybe a loaded thing to put down at the end of the interview, but if you had to pick somebody famous that you are like, do you know who that would be? Do you know who I might write down as someone who I think that you are like? I put James Baldwin, man.
James Baldwin.
James Baldwin, man. You give me such like insightful vibe, man. You're the way that you just say things are so clear, and it's just, you have so much to say, and it comes, even though you and I are two very different people, I can relate to the stuff that you say, and I can really get on your level, and you have a really great way of saying it. It's not, you don't say it like in a totally like insane or what you say mania way. Like, it comes off super smart, super clever. And like I get, like, the demographic similarity between you and James Baldwin, but it's like at the same time it's like I think he's one of the best writers of all time. I think you're one of the best joke writers that I know. So, or what you think of that man yourself, I was not offensive to you, but
I mean, James Baldwin is definitely someone that I really admire.
Yeah.
I've never really read a lot of his writing.
Oh, you haven't?
I watched a documentary
Okay.
about him.
Yeah.
It was on Netflix. It was really good. It's really inspiring.
Yeah.
But I believe that the punchline comes from clarity.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're clear, people can understand you, and that's the straight line to the part of their brain that makes them laugh.
Yeah. And just the way he carried himself too. I mean, he never sacrificed anything for a cheap. I mean, obviously I'm not a laugh on his end, but I don't know what the equivalent for an author cheap thing would be. But yeah, man.
You could read Twilight.
Yeah, totally that.
Something like that.
Well, dude, thank you so much for your time, man. I super appreciate it. I could talk to you for 2 more hours. This was fantastic. I learned so much from you, and I hope you don't quit comedy, but it has nothing to do with me. So, but I respect.
I'm not gonna quit being funny.
I didn't say that. I hope you don't quit being a comic.
I may quit this business. I can't live off chicken tenders.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you so much again. Be safe, man. I hope to see you in person soon, man. Always enjoy a time with you. So,
thanks, man.
See you, buddy. Take care, man. I'll see you. Bye.
Peace.
See ya.
All right, that was my time. Thank you very much.
All right, that's our interview with Brandon. What a great guest he was. I mean, it was the way that he just, sees comedy, sees life is super unique, and I appreciated his take, especially when he was talking about echolocation. Just an incredible analogy that I'm so glad I got to sit down and hear him talk. Please check out his podcast, English for Criminals. Check out his debut stand-up recording in January, and go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Help me out a little bit. Like some of these videos. I would really appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Marc Stoudemire. Take care.